Good evening. I'm Liz McDonald, the assessor for Richland County. I've only been in this position about 4 months, and Beverly and Daniel are helping pass out some information on our office. I have been with the assessor's office for about 16 years. I spent about 6 years as a field appraiser and then another 9 or 10 years as the deputy assessor for administration. So I've had the opportunity, opportunity in my 16 years to get a little bit of work in every section of our office, whether it's from the administrative side and processing deeds, whether it's going out in the field and inspecting a 5,000 square foot house or a 1,600 square foot starter home or even an 800 square foot mobile home. So I've also had the opportunity to work in the northwest part of the county, the southeast. So I've had a pretty good experience in the assessor's office. I grew up in Columbia, went to public schools in Columbia, Richland County. Graduated from AC Flora High School many moons ago, and this has been my home. Just to let you know a little bit about me. What I'd like to do is just tell you give you a brief synopsis of the sheet that you have in front of you, and then just open it up for questions. It seems like each Richland 101 that I've had the privilege to talk to, they seem to have different questions about different things, and so I'm going to let y'all kind of dictate that part in just a minute. But just to let you know a little bit about the assessor's office, we have 32 full-time employees, and if you look on our sheet, the sheet that I passed out, we have our GIS mapping department. You know, as soon as a deed or a plat is recorded, that's where it's going to hit our office first, because we need to know how that parcel's laid out for mapping purposes. And actually that first parcel layer is very important in a lot of departments in Richland County. If you go back to the flood we just had in October, it was very, I think, important to emergency services getting out there and things like that. Then once the deed or a plat comes through our office, it hits our ownership department. We maintain the ownership records of all property in Richland County, and when I say property, I'm talking about real property. We're talking about land, buildings, and mobile homes. Mr. Brawley's going to talk to you about all the cars and all that other business stuff in just a minute. We also have an appraisal section. We have 15 licensed appraisers, and they interact with folks daily. We have people that appeal values, and they meet with you and talk to you when you disagree with the value on your home. They get out in the field and they inspect properties where building permits are pulled. Anytime a building permit is pulled, our office gets a copy of that, and then the appraiser gets out to see how it compares to the property record we have. The appraiser also has to inspect every deed that comes across. So anytime a property is sold, he inspects the deeds that come across, and the appraisers are assigned specific areas in the county where they get to know their neighborhoods very well and can make good decisions based on their knowledge of the area. We have a data entry section. Believe it or not, we still have a section where we fill out input cards in our office, and we send them to one other department section to enter all that data. We're slowly migrating from that, but we still have our little data entry department. And then we wrap it up with our mobile home section. We've got about 9,000 mobile homes that are registered in Richland County, and we have one lady, Camilla Gill, that's responsible for all those, and she does an awesome job with those. Just to tell you a little bit about Richland County and the land that's out there, we've got 170,000 parcels of real property. That includes our mobile homes too. The taxable value on those is $22.7 billion. And then I just found out from Mr. Woodward that 67% of that money coming in comes from property taxes. So that makes me feel like we've got somewhat of a purposeful job here, and we have a duty to really get this thing right. The one thing with our office, and I think you'll find with the auditor and treasurer, we all operate under Title 12 of the South Carolina Code of Law, and that deals with taxation. So however property is assessed, how it's valued, how deadlines are done, these are all mandated by state law. They're not mandated by county law. And the laws, these state laws don't give us much leeway in how we operate, and the purpose of those laws is not to be penalizing, but it's so that each of our offices can be fair and equitable with the folks that come through. So that's really our office in a nutshell. We have, if I go back and I go over each department, our GIS department, we have about 15,000 deeds that come through each year. So they're going to probably map out anywhere from 600 to 700 new parcels, and they're also going to map out new subdivisions each year. Each year we have at least 10 new subdivisions that come on the record, and that accounts for about 1,500 to 2,000 new lots a year. And last year was the first time since 2010 that we started seeing some growth. I think everybody knew that we went in that little slump, back there about 2009, 10, yeah, 8, yeah. And so it didn't really get realized on our records till 2010. So if we have 10, 11, 12, 13, so we had about 5 years in there where we saw minimal growth, and Mr. Woodward and Daniel over there didn't have much money to work with to provide all these services that you saw. When you see the education, you see the public works, you see the public safety. We had no growth. So last year was the first year, and I hope in a couple of days I'll get Mr. Brawley some information so we can see about some more growth coming forward for this next fiscal year. I could tell you something about laws. Y'all want to hear about some laws and how we value property? Huh? Okay. When we value real property, the state law requires us to value it at its fair market value. And fair market value would be what it would be valued for if it were exposed to an open market and there was reasonable give and take, offer and counter offer between buyer and seller. If I was to sell a property to my brother, would you think that'd be very much of an arm's length transaction? No, because I'm probably going to cut him a deal. Even if he frustrates the heck out of me, I'm probably going to cut him a deal. But if I went out and I advertised my house for sale on some internet listing site, so it got out there, I hired a realtor, so they're posting it everywhere. So that meant a lot of folks were able to see that property listed for sale, and they could give me an offer. And it could be 5 of y'all that come in, and you could offer me $1,000, you could offer me $10,000, you could offer me $5,000, you could offer me $3,000. I'm going to put all that together. Well, you might have given me the best offer, but there are some conditions to the sale. Maybe you want me to do this, this, and this. And I'll say, okay, well, yours was the best offer, but look, if you're asking me to do all that, I'm going to ask for $12,000. So there's some give and take in that. So that's what an arm's length transaction is. Does that make any sense there? Okay. And then there's this Act 388, that occurred back in 2007. I think it was implemented in 2008. And it was called the South Carolina Real Property Valuation Reform Act. And what that told us is that any time a property sells, it could be considered what's called an ATI, an assessable transfer of interest. And we could revalue that property the next tax year to its current fair market value. Okay? That law hit pretty hard, and it hurt a lot of commercial sales. Because what it could be is if you had, let's say, 2 apartment complexes right across the road from each other. They were both on for $500,000. Okay, same apartment. This one sold for $2 million. That's its fair market value. The next tax year, it goes to $2 million, and this guy's still paying taxes on $500,000. Okay, so we kind of lost a little bit of our fair and equitable when Act 388 passed. All right. But every 5 years, the county has a reassessment program, and our last one was in 2014. And so at that time, we should get everybody leveled back out where everybody's paying their equal, fair share of taxes on that point. Our next reassessment will be 2019, when we revalue all property. So when we have a reassessment program, the value holds tight for 5 years. Unless you have one of those ATIs, the assessable transfer of interest. If you add to your property, let's say your mom has to move in, so you add a mother-in-law suite, that's going to add some value. Maybe you demolitioned a part of the house or the whole thing. then we'll take away some value. But if you have no major change in the condition of your property, the value should hold true for 5 years. So why do my taxes go up every year? I'm going to let Mr. Brawley. Each year, the cost of doing business goes up, so the millage rate goes up. So it's not necessarily that we raise your value every year, it's just the cost to provide these services to everyone goes up a little bit each year. All right. Do you understand what a reassessment year is? Basically? No. Okay. A reassessment year, that's important because that's when we're going to get the most contact with the most people. Okay? So we just had a reassessment year in 2014, like I was saying just a second ago, and what that meant was we look at the value of all 170,000 parcels, and we analyze the sales and what the market's been doing over the last 5 years. And based on what the market's been doing over the previous 5 years, we're going to say, okay, we need to adjust everybody's value either a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and hopefully we find a proper value right there in the middle. I think our last reassessment, we were about 98% of value of the fair market value. So to hit it 100% is really tough, especially when you talk about a mass situation. And once we set that value there in our reassessment year, that 2014, that value should carry on for 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. Does that make a little more sense? Sort of, kind of, maybe? Okay. Then in 2019, we'll get ready for the same process in 2019. Okay. Religious institutions, they're tax exempt under South Carolina law. They go through the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue would let us know whether the property they own is tax exempt or not. As far as corporations, when you talk about big business, you have big business meaning a company that I guess you could say like a business downtown, like a big real estate company or a big bank. They're going to pay taxes based on their fair market value. Okay, but those are valued based on the income they bring in. Those are income producing properties. Because if somebody buys a business, they're buying it based on the income stream that comes in. How much money am I going to make? They're not buying it based on the land and building value. They want to make some money. But then we also have what's called manufacturing properties. If you talk about big properties, big things like that, that's going to be billed, valued, and assessed under the Department of Revenue as manufacturing properties. The county still collects the taxes, but we don't do the values on those. What you find out is that with Richland County being central to government and being downtown, you'll find that a good bit, over 50% of the properties downtown are tax exempt. That's in the city of Columbia limits. So if you've got upwards of 75% of non-taxable properties downtown, that's tough to get money coming in to get things done. Because you've got government properties are tax exempt, churches are tax exempt, USC's tax exempt, the universities. I think somebody told me we have over 15 universities downtown. Can you believe that? Small and large. The year you turn 66, you can apply when you turn 65, but it's going to be that year, it kicks in the year you turn 66, and that's called homestead exemption. Homestead exemption. And in South Carolina, we have 2 exemptions for homeowners. We have what's called the special assessment as legal residents, and then you have homestead exemption for those 65 and older, blind, disabled. Okay, that's the homestead exemption, and that exempts the first $50,000 worth of value from the taxes. And Mr. Brawley he's going to be able to tell you more detail about that than I could ever think of. But you bring up the good question about legal residents. The special assessment is legal residents. How many here, this is your primary home in Richland County that are here? Okay, has everybody applied for the special assessment as legal residents? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard of it.
Okay, this is really important for homeowners, and anytime you have your primary residence that you own and occupy, it's your domicile, it's where you go home to sleep at night, you go to wash your clothes, do the dishes, you can apply for the special assessment as legal residents. And people always talk about 4%, 4%. So maybe you think of, have I applied for my 4%? Well, you want to make sure you do this because receiving the special assessment as legal residents is not just a difference between 4 and 6%. You're also exempted from your school operations portion of the tax bill. And you just saw Mr. Woodward's display up there. That's where most of the money goes, huh? So it's kind of a crazy law that got passed. This was all part of that South Carolina Real Property Tax Relief Act, or Valuation Reform Act, and it exempted the homeowner, the primary residence, from paying school operations on your tax bill. That doesn't make any sense. The first thing you'd want to think about, I'm thinking that everybody here, if this is your primary residence, you know, your contact in the legislature is extremely important, because it's going to be the folks in this room that are going to re-elect those folks. And if you go back to the law I talked about a minute ago, where the school operations portions of the tax bill was exempted, you know, that's what the legislature put forward, and they put that to you, the citizens, and me, the citizens of the state, and 75% of us voted to do away with that. And we didn't know what, you know, you didn't know what you were doing at the time. It sounded good, but you didn't know what you were doing, because right there it hurt businesses that bring in lots of money. But no, I would say that's your first stop, is to realize that you are citizens, and you've taken the time to do something like this, which is wonderful, is to be able to take just a little extra time to make those calls and let your legislature, let your county council know. We have a lobbying group from Richland County, you know, that we could hear from you to take, you know, this is what we want to take up there. This is what our citizens are saying. But it's hard if you're not a big lobbying group. It's tough. But I think starting with the grassroots campaigns, starting local, get your neighbors involved, seeing if Richland County can afford to get some lobbyists up there to say, hey, these are what our citizens are saying. Yes, sir.
Information regarding like property taxes, property holdings, valuations, are those records public?
Absolutely. Everything we do is public record. You know, the only thing we're not going to be able to pass on is your personal identification information, such as Social Security numbers, driver's licenses, and things like that.
How do you access that information?
Typically through a FOIA request. If you're looking to get a whole, you know, the whole database, that's going to be a FOIA request. And I hate to say that our IT department charges for that. That's typically about an $8,500 deal to get every tax record for all 170,000 properties. I wish I could say it was just something that's out there easy breezy to get. If you want to come to the office, I can show you different ways to search it where you could maybe get around that. Anything else? Okay, well, guys, thank you very much for coming and asking questions. And in the handout, it's got our office number, it's got our email. Sharice Knox is the lady that responds very quickly via email and gets the emails to where they need to be so the proper person answers. And I hope you'll find that we do answer timely and effectively for you. And if you don't, please let me know. You know, you never want to get those kinds of emails or phone calls, but we do try and learn from those things, I guess, and look at those as opportunities to get better. So thank y'all for your time tonight.